Today is a very sad day, or the 5th anniversary of a sad day, because 5 years ago today, Metroid Prime 4 was announced to be scrapped completely in development and restarted with Retro Studios at the helm. Why didn't they just give it to Retro from the start? That's just something I'll never be able to let go of until we see the game. But we got a big panel here today. All kinds of Metroid content creators here. We got Reese and Andy from the Omega Metroid podcast. And we got Ed, the Metroid Trainer, and Albert, the Orpheon. So many people here today. We're going to talk about Metroid Prime 4, but the first question I have for you all today is 2024 the time to Prime 4? Yeah, we'll start with you, Andy. Do you think this is the year we'll finally see and or play Metroid Prime 4?
Yes to both. Yes to both. I think it has to be, right? Like it's been so long. It's been such an odyssey.
I feel like some of us said that last year, but I feel like this year it feels a lot more like it.
You kind of called me out a little bit, actually, because I thought that, as we talked about on our show, I thought we were actually going to see the Switch 2 reveal in late 2023. Like maybe not like gameplay of any games, but kind of like how they did with the NX to the Switch or whatever. But I think the Switch 2 is coming out this year, 2024. I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be a launch title or close to it. So, yeah, right? Like, we got to see it, and it's got to come out.
I agree, too. I totally agree. Reese, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if we're going to be playing it this year, but for now I'm cautiously optimistic that we will see it in a meaningful way. So, we're not getting, PNG number 2. I feel like when we see it, it's going to be like a meaningful trailer. We're going to see gameplay. We're going to have an idea of what we're up against. I don't think we see it before the Switch 2 is officially unveiled. And, we'll probably get into that in more detail later. But that's kind of the first hurdle that I'm looking at. It's like, okay, before I even think about Metroid Prime 4, let's get that Switch 2 revealed, and then we can start focusing on Metroid Prime 4. That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
It's kind of just insane. They announced this thing when the Switch comes out, and now it's like we have to wait to see it until the Switch 2. That's just like, so frustrating.
I got accepted in my university and graduated before we've seen more info on Prime 4, except for that little piece of concept art.
Right.
We just celebrated our 4 years of the Omega Metroid podcast, and I don't think that the game had been delayed by the time that we started. Is that right? Like it's been forever, absolutely forever. And I think you're right, Doom. I think we have to see the Switch 2 first, but I'm okay to believe. I'm okay to hope.
Yeah, I feel like it could be either or. They could get away with some kind of showing something before the Switch 2 is revealed, kind of like they did with Breath of the Wild, but that's like a whole other situation too. But Ed, do you think this is the year? Do you think that all those years of training Metroids was worth it for this time here?
Oh man, it feels like it's never gonna come out, honestly, but I'm really optimistic, like what Dumino said previously, that we might be seeing something like this year. I'm hoping at the very least it is a trailer. Like if it was like another JPEG of like Samus like in the shadow or something, it'd be a bit teasing too much. But I don't think we'll be getting anything like major gameplay related until maybe a year or so, because I don't know, after hearing so many times of like it's going to be the year, I don't know, I kind of want to keep on pushing them and like putting pressure on like the team or whatever to deliver something at least. So
for real.
But I'm optimistic we'll be releasing like a trailer or something. Maybe Samus T-posing in a gray screen, possibly. Hopefully.
That'd be nice.
I will accept that.
I remember that being a meme. Progress on Metroid Prime 4, and it's just the T-pose.
Showing like too early in development and all that to show anything.
All right, Mr. Orpheon, take us home. Do you think this is the year?
No. I don't. If I may be a realist, I could probably see like a mention or something, but when looking at this realistically, let's take for granted that they announced the change in 2019, and then the year after that, we all know what happened. So that definitely also threw a monkey wrench in the schedule in the whole development process. So seeing how these games usually take between 5 or 6 years to do, and between 2019 and 2020 you can only really count it as 1 year, I still think that they're rather midway in development, for as much as I know how the industry works, and at least a team like Retro that likes to take their time and polish their work and all these other things. I'm optimistic that they will show us something, even if it's like a pre-rendered trailer or some sort of teaser or yet another PNG or JPEG. But if I'm being realistic, I think this might be going for like a 2026 or 2020 late 2025 release. And frankly, I for one am pretty fine with that, because I'd rather them cancel the game and try to have done it with a different developer, and it's simply they were like, all right, it didn't work, and then according to, as far as I know, somebody at Retro came over with a different idea, and then they decided to go with that, and instead of, you know, just trying to put it out because they announced it and then it's not living up to our expectations, and then we end up with something that we might not fully enjoy. So I for one am like rather happy that they're sort of taking their time and their silence to just focus on working on the game and not getting us too excited. But I'm pretty sure that once it's announced or revealed, we will know either an estimate release or a final release, kind of like what they did with Dread. I guess they're just trying to avoid what ended up happening with like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, where they revealed it and then they kept putting trailer after trailer after trailer, and they get getting delayed and delayed and delayed, and they feel they can afford that with Zelda, but they maybe cannot really afford that with Metroid, and they're trying to push Prime 4 to basically be the way that they can make Metroid be this other big pillar for their company. And hopefully with all that happening, I am very optimistic that all this silence just means that there's a lot of progress going on. Especially as, you know, they keep hiring more and more people to come in on board and work on different art projects and other art assets inside the game and stuff like that. So I'd stay optimistic, but I really don't want to like set myself up for quote unquote disappointment when a big game that has a big weight, and I think that the whole delay signifies how much Nintendo wants to believe in this game, that they are willing to just let us know when it's ready.
Wow.
But 2026.
Yeah.
Holy.
That would be.
I mean, there's plenty.
I'm gonna be
plenty
real.
of play
If that
between
game
there and
doesn't,
then.
I'm gonna be real. If that game doesn't come out in 2026, that's just embarrassing. Like, you announced that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'd say 2026, because like, all right, I'm gonna give them the 5-year benefit, but I don't really count 2020 because of the whole lockdown that happened. And then 2019 was like, all right, if we take it as a few months before they made that video that's been roughly in development, or at least some of the concept phases, to the point where they could make a pitch to Nintendo, you know, 2020, after 2020, it'd be like year one. So, but yeah, I did say that if it's beyond 2026, then I guess we could start making the Half-Life 3 jokes.
Yeah, and
I agree.
We're already making those Half-Life 2 jokes with this game, and that's just part of why I just want to see this game finally, so those jokes can stop.
Yeah, I mean,
Honestly.
it is kind of silly in my opinion. Not that the jokes, but like, we've gotten a lot of Metroid since Prime 4's announcement, and that for one is perhaps the reason I'm very patient with it, because we got Samus Returns, we got Dread, and now we got the Prime Remaster. So like,
Yeah.
I feel like we've got enough to hold us over between one and the other. It's not that same drought after Other M or after Super Metroid.
Right.
I definitely agree with what you're saying, but I like in terms of like all the great Metroid content, I found like something similar when Tears of the Kingdom was coming out. A lot of Zelda fans were like, before we had the release date, were like, you know, this game isn't coming out till 2025, 2026, and I don't know. It was almost like they were just very like, I do think that it's like, you're probably realistic, but I also think it's like appropriate to be hopeful too, and say like, I think that the journey might be close to an end, because like, you know, as we'll talk about in a little bit, I do think Metroid Prime Remastered kind of gives us a little bit of a roadmap to how we could get there, but I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but yeah.
I mean, that's a perfect gun to jump right now, because I do want to move into the Metroid Prime Remastered topic that I have planned here. That's
You know, I'm playing it right now.
Just playing it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just checked
Yeah.
out your video on like the ranking the boss battles, and like, yeah, that was so great. Prime Remastered is pretty much the one thing that's different about this year compared to like the years before, and I was surprised by it. I didn't think this remaster was going to be as good as it turned out to be. Because just given Nintendo's history with remasters and re-releases, like, they don't really do too much to enhance those games. But here, Retro Studios came in and said, hey, remember when we made the best-looking video game on the GameCube? Now we're going to make the best-looking video game on Switch.
On the Switch.
Yes, and it's just the fact that it looked so good while still having the essence of Metroid Prime, that's a really tough thing to do in a remaster or a remake, is just to still keep the essence of what made the original so good. Look at Halo 1 Anniversary. Those vibes were off in some levels. Did this remaster kind of adjust our expectations for Prime 4, whether they be positive or negative? Mostly positive, because let's be real. Ed, let's start with you.
Seeing how beautiful like that game can look on the Switch, I'm like, it's honestly blown away by how amazing like the game could actually look, like with the graphics and like the visuals and everything. It makes me more optimistic for like how the game would like appear now on the Switch, or now with the rumors of like the Switch 2 or whatever. Seeing that they're able to like I guess add in so much of like detailed life in such an old game, just I can definitely see them like testing the waters of how like the lighting and like the just the visuals of the game would look and everything like that. But I was kind of hoping for like just when it comes to like the Prime 1 remake though, I was just kind of like shocked because like I didn't think it would ever come out. Like there was this bunch of like rumors always saying that Prime 1 was gonna get remastered, and it just never happened. And I don't know if that was actually like, if any of those leaks or anything were like actually connected to this release of like Prime 1 or whatever. I don't know if anyone's any information on that, but yeah, overall the game just makes me more optimistic of like how beautiful the next game's gonna turn out. Yeah, they're definitely testing the waters, and yeah, I'm really optimistic.
It really is shocking what they were able to pull off on a standard Switch.
But like,
it was insane.
Has it been stated for how long they've been working on the game though? Like, was it like something they did real quickly after the Prime 4 thing, or were they working on
apparently it was done for like a long time before it released. I mean, if you believe the rumors, but who knows? But I don't know. Yeah, that's a great question.
I know something like that doesn't take as long as like a main game. I remember the Wind Waker, Nintendo straight up said Wind Waker HD. Granted, that was like 10 years ago. Took 6 months to do, which is kind of impressive because that game still looks really good. But I imagine Prime Remastered probably took around 1, maybe closer to 2 years, because like that game was so detailed. It's just insane how good it looks. But I remember thinking when Metroid Dread came out, like if I thought to myself, if Prime 4 looks somewhat similar to this, but like with a good frame rate, I would be happy with it. And then Prime Remastered said, no. You're going to get something that looks way better than
bigger.
that.
Yeah, what's the higher than that?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Reese, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so obviously, we were talking about, how just unbelievable this game looks. And, I'm sure I think Prime 4 is going to make us feel that feeling all of again, that shock and awe, of how in the world is this console not up in flames playing this game right now, that kind of thing, there's all these PS4, Switch 2 discussions going on. I think Prime 4 is just going to end that in one single beat. If there's anyone that can do it, it's Retro Studios. But there's actually something I think even more interesting that I think we can gather from Prime Remastered, and that is I think Prime 4 is going to stand on its own just like the previous trilogy. However, I think Prime 1 in particular is being looked at as an influence, since that title has such a huge impact on Western game developers in particular.
Yeah.
I think Prime Remastered was a part of that research process, if that makes sense. I'm a big Doom fan as well, and it kind of reminds me a lot of, the Doom 4 story, which eventually became Doom 2016, because they kind of went through similar processes. When that game was first shown off, it was borrowing a lot of elements from other cinematic shooters at that time without really retaining its own identity, and it didn't get the reception that id Software wanted at the time. And so that build was ultimately scrapped and development restarted from scratch, which led to the release of Doom 2016, which had substantially higher reception. The initial pitch was that the game was revealed at QuakeCon 2014. It was basically that this new staff at id was largely composed of fresh talent that grew up playing Doom when they were young, and that they were influenced to join the industry because of it. And now they get to make their own Doom game. And I think Prime 4 is going through something very similar. Remember, like Prime is like over 20 years old now. So, a lot of these kids and teens, who played that game are now like professionals in the industry. And, whereas Retro Studios was once just, another studio that Nintendo owned, now people look at Retro Studios and it's like, oh, that's the Metroid Prime studio. I want to make a Metroid Prime game. And so you're seeing all this fresh blood coming in who joined the industry because of this game, probably one of several. And I think that's pretty awesome if you ask me. I think that's a really good sign.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of people tell me like Retro's not the same team as it was when they made the Prime trilogy, and I'm like, so? Like, it's like new and fresh eyes are important to have in like video game development. If it wasn't for the younger talent over at Nintendo, we wouldn't have Splatoon, baby. Like, seriously.
If it were
I
the
mean,
same
you can have
team-
staff turnover, but still keep the same culture too. Like that's totally a thing, right? Like a culture
is,
of quality,
totally.
a culture of like really high quality. So yeah,
Yeah, Orpheon, what were you
If
gonna
you
say?
had the same if you had the same team from like 2002 and 2007, I'd be raising more eyebrows. Then you're telling me, hey, there's new talent, new blood that's just pumping some new stuff into this franchise.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think our good old pal Rob over at Rule of Two Review, he made a video a few years back when that reboot was announced, and apparently there's still quite a bit of staff members from Retro Studios still working there, like from the old Metroid Prime days. So a mix of young and new blood could be like a really good thing to have. Sometimes sometimes ideals could clash, maybe, but I don't know. We could make a whole video about the internal drama of Retro Studios that may or not be there. Who knows? But Orpheon, I'm going to ask you the same question. Did Prime Remastered adjust how you expect Metroid Prime 4 to be at all?
I'd say yes, not perhaps at a crazy degree, because I saw Prime Remaster as essentially a tech demo for the guys at Retro to play around with whatever new lighting and effects engine and models they can play with. And at times, some of the best way you can practice for the main game is to go back and retweak an old game and put these new technologies into work to just see if it's going to function for you in the next one. So for me, I took this as a way for them. They probably were already, trying to remake some of these models just for funds and try to do it maybe as an art test to have the new members of Retro Studios sort of get eased into the art direction and the philosophy of the company. And then they had enough of it to the point that say like, well, let's just make it a full-on remaster. But like gameplay wise, I can't really say anything because it's, still good old Metroid Prime, except that, well, maybe Prime 4 is definitely going to have twin stick shooters, controls and all that other stuff. But I was really blown away by the visuals because, as you said, it's really hard to pull off not just revitalizing the visuals, but staying true to the original's art direction. So the main sign for me is that it showed me that after, all these years since Retro put out Tropical Freeze, that they haven't lost their touch. And you can perfectly see it by them going back to their first game and just redoing from scratch the Omega Pirate, Flagra, Shigov, and all these models that were outdated and just putting them in a new life, in a new light, where it feels like how we misremember the original game looking back in 2002. I can totally say that for a fact, because like I remember playing this game when it came out on my tiny CRT TV, and now I'm playing it on the Switch. For me, the most outstanding thing for it is there's still no fusion suit. What the heck? 2, it's essentially just like how far can they push this engine onto a whole new game where they don't have to perhaps stick to the same limitations of the codes and the engines and the way that the original Prime 1 works, but giving the faster loading screens and some of quality of life improvements. It just simply shows that the team were perhaps using this as a way to test their waters, get comfortable and warm up before applying all that knowledge into Prime 4. Not to say that they're starting after the game's been out, but it's mostly like maybe they did this way earlier, and then this before shifting into doing it. I just do not know how other Nintendo games and other remasters are gonna get away with reports and remakes at $60 or $70 when this whole package is only there for $40.
Yeah.
And it's, I still am in awe with how much they went back and tweaked, because one thing is remaking a model. Another thing is also taking out the UVs, creating the textures, rigging or updating the rigs to fit these new models, and then also update the animations, because a lot of Samus's animations in the remaster are just completely different, that it just shows you that they are still trying to bring their focus into attention to detail, which is perhaps the main cornerstone that made Metroid Prime, is all details are there and nothing feels like an afterthought. Like every single part of every single world of every single room has a particular detail that is sort of trying to tell a story. And the way that they completely up the ante with this new remaster is just, it's easy to get excited about how the next game is going to look visually, while also saying that, yeah, the Switch may be outdated and all these other things, and the PS4 and PC and whatever, but it's not so much about the hardware, it's about how can you use it to your advantage.
Right. It's a lot easier to develop a game for one specific piece of hardware than it is for a multitude of them at the same time. Like
exactly.
Third-party developers have to do. But yeah, great points all around there. I think, Andy, you're last. Did the Prime Remaster adjust your expectations for Prime 4? Of course it did. Tell me how.
I mean, it did and didn't. And I say that because Prime Remaster had a lot of features that I would expect or have expected Metroid Prime 4 to have. One of the great things about Metroid Prime Remastered is all the different control options. You can use gyro, you can use dual stick, you can use tank, and I would expect Metroid Prime 4 to have that level of options and customizability. I don't even know if that's a word, but it also looks beautiful, right? As I would expect Metroid Prime 4 to look beautiful. I think Metroid Prime really has a reputation for pushing the technical limitations of whatever system that it's going to be on. And, Prime Remastered obviously was no different. You could say it's the best looking Nintendo game ever, right? So in that sense, that's kind of what I expect from Metroid Prime 4. And so in that sense, it more or less just kind of confirmed what I was thinking. And I guess one of the reasons too, which I think that we're a little bit closer to the finish line maybe than some of our other panelists here is I'm not saying that I would want this, but I think that you could have released that game with the exact same control options, the exact same level of graphical fidelities, exact same level of load, everything, right? But with a new game, call it Metroid Prime 4, a new world, new story, new everything, right? And I think that would be perfectly acceptable. Again, I don't want that because I do want the Metroid Prime series to evolve past what we've kind of always known it to be. But if that game was, again, in a new setting, in a new world with new music, new story, that would be a perfectly acceptable Metroid Prime 4, I think. So I do, to kind of echo what Orpheon said, I think a lot of that game was kind of a tech demo is probably a good way to put it, just to a proof of concept for how Metroid Prime 4 could work. So yeah, I thought when it came out, it just kind of reconfirmed a lot of ideas that I already had about Metroid Prime 4 that I think is safe to say that Metroid Prime 4 is definitely going to follow in at least some of the footsteps that Remastered laid.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah.
If I may jump on your point, because I totally agree with the fact that I really hope that Metroid Prime 4 just completely goes in a whole new direction. Because it's been so long, and I feel that if you continue any of the phase-on storyline, then you kind of take away the merits that Prime 3's conclusion brought.
I don't know. That trailer was blue.
I mean, so was Metroid Fusion, and
oh, true.
It can be blue. There can be more things that are blue. Federation Force was blue, and there was no phase-on on it. And I recall an interview made by IGN, granted years back, about Metroid Prime 4, and they said, with Kensuke Tanabe, who said that the phase-on story is over. We want to move somewhere new. Mm-hmm. And that somewhere new was with Silex, which is, following on that cliffhanger from Prime 3, and Federation Force seems to be pointing at that same direction. So I guess the main question is going to be if there's been any changes behind the scenes since Retro took the helm, but if Tanabe is still involved in producing role, I'm pretty sure that they're also trying to just open a new chapter to the Metroid universe, so that way we're not also stagnating with the same old phase-on Metroids, which is part of the reason I think so many people enjoy Dread. It's just that it was the familiar Metroid that we had, but its story and adventure and threats were going in a different direction where it could stand in its own merits in some fashion. But I have hopes that with all this time, I have full hope that with all the time they've been taking into development, this is one thing they've definitely considered just for marketing purposes alone.
Yeah, I just hope it's not open world. If you're gonna experiment with that at some point, do it later. Right now, I still think the environments could be bigger, right? Imagine Talanoa World, but maybe 3 times that size. That's the extent of it.
there's a sweet spot I think that they could get to. It doesn't have to be. I do think there would be potential for open world, but I don't think you want like your first big Metroid Prime game in 15 years or whatever it's been to try something that new. I think you want to blend a little bit of the old with a lot of bit of the new. So
Right.
In my opinion, I always said that if they were going to do open world, it's just as simply creating more paths that one can take and more rooms instead of just the Breath of the Wild approach where it's like go anywhere, because the main issue you sometimes have with open world, at least with the Metroid formula, is that it can really break the formula on its head, where the satisfaction is, getting item A, explore area A to get item B, and then all that cycle that we come to like. So I think that with just, like you guys said, expanding the map, adding more alternate routes, perhaps and even sequence break opportunities, could be enough to make the game feel quote-unquote open world.
For sure.
I mean, if you think about it, every Prime game at the end of it all turns into an open world scavenger hunt.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. So with one final question, and then we'll close out this discussion. Switch 2. A big hot
Electric
button.
Boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo. They need to call it that. I don't know why I never thought of that. But yeah, a lot of people have speculated, and rightfully so, that this game is going to be launching on the Switch 2. Maybe that's a whole other topic. Like, there's so much to discuss about this.
Yeah.
Is this going to be cross-gen? Will they have a Switch version and a Switch 2 version? Will the game only release on Switch but get Switch 2 enhancements? Is this even going to launch on Switch 2? Or is it going to be Switch 2 exclusive? So many different questions to be asking. But Reese, what do you think is going to happen? Out of all the options I listed, what's the most likely?
Well, I'm
PS6
very
exclusive.
PS6 exclusive. There we go.
No, we're going back to the Wii U, baby. That's where it's all at.
Hey, let's go.
The Xenoblade X machine? Yo!
Seriously, at this point, I'm pretty doubtful that Prime 4 is going to be a Switch 1 exclusive, because it would be almost Samus Returns all over again. And while Nintendo is fantastic at making baffling decisions, I'm fairly confident that they've learned their lesson on that front. As for cross-gen versus Switch 2 exclusive, I am perfectly fine with both scenarios, though I definitely think it's more likely that this is cross-gen, which is completely fine. And as mentioned before, it's Retro Studios. This game is going to look stunning regardless. And I mean, there's so many cross-gen games today, even. Like Andy, I know you're playing.
I'm playing Horizon Forbidden West right now, and it's awesome.
Yeah, on the PS4, and like it still looks
Yeah.
incredible on PS4, right?
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and so I think that Prime 4, regardless whether it's an exclusive or whether it's cross-gen, this game is still going to be ambitious as hell, and it's going to look beautiful.
For sure. Andy, what are your thoughts on that? I know we've had a little debate about this
Yeah.
on Twitter.
We have, and I know your thoughts. But I mean, everything Doom said, I think is right. Like everything kind of revolves around like, when does this game come out, right? Because I mean, if it's coming out in 2026, there's no way it's coming out on the Switch, right? It's going to be a Switch 2 exclusive. That just makes sense to me. If it's coming out even a year after the Switch 2 releases, I would say again, it's probably not coming out on the Switch. What I think makes sense and what I think will happen versus what I want to happen would be, I think what would make sense is that this game is going to be somewhat of a launch title for the Switch 2, probably within the first 3 months or so, hopefully. And you're probably going to get a version on the Switch that maybe it doesn't run quite as smooth or quite as well, whatever. That maybe there's a little bit of hiccups on that version on the Switch. In what I would do, I mean, at this point, and I know this is where we disagree, because I feel like, yes, Nintendo said, this is a Switch game, but I mean, I think at this point, if I was in charge of Retro or Nintendo, I'd be like, you know what, let's just pour everything we got into making this the best possible Switch 2 title that we can. So up those graphics, up those I mean, whatever. I'm no developer, but make it so that this is a showcase for the Switch 2. And I don't know, maybe you could still do that and still have it released on the Switch. You probably can, but that would be what I would do. And I know that would rub a lot of people the wrong way, and I get it, but I just think historically you've kind of seen you even look at Breath of the Wild, and yeah, it released on the Wii U, and yeah, it looks exactly the same, but 90% of more than 90% of the copies sold of that game are for the new console. So I think if you really want to make Metroid Prime 4 be as successful as it can be, I would go all in on Switch 2, but I think it's probably going to be cross-gen. Probably.
Also keep in mind, 10 people owned the Wii U, so
That is true. Yeah, that is true. A lot more people own the Switch.
Owner of 2 of those 10 Wii U's.
I brushed off. I brushed off the thickest layer of dust on my Wii U the other day. It was crazy.
I've just been replaying Xenoblade Chronicles X more than any of the ones on the Switch, so.
I can't believe that game's not on Switch. Such a wicked game.
I know.
That's one Xenoblade game.
right.
Yeah. I guess to echo what Doom said, though, I would hate to see Metroid Prime 4 get Samus Returns, and I'm sure that's not going to happen. But
Yeah, I don't think
mean,
so.
Well,
God, please
even-
don't let that happen.
Well, I mean, if it did, the Switch 2, it would depend on if the Switch 2 is
Electric
backwards compatible also. So it's not going to
Yeah.
be like, but if that were the case, I would still hope like the Switch 2 version gets enhancements, you know? Which is also kind of why I'm just like, then why not just release the packaging, be like Switch 1, Switch 2, stuff like that. I know Xbox tried doing some weird thing recently where where they would just, any game that was available on the Xbox One and the Series X, the box art would always just look the same and would just list the consoles. I pictured something like that for the Switch 2, maybe if it's backwards compatible, but that's a whole other topic. Ed, what do you foresee happening with Prime 4? Cross-gen?
So
like that.
what's the general time frame for like the Super Switch or the Switch 2 coming out? Like what's the general
Electric Boogaloo.
So
because like I'm kind of out of the loop in general when it comes to like the new console stuff, and I
me
kind
too.
of just barely heard about this like a couple of days ago about the new possible
So the
Switch.
theories are pointing to somewhere later not next year, this year, 2024.
Later this
And-
year.
Yeah, but that's all based on pure speculation. I think
yeah.
there's been some analysts saying like educated guesses on when this would come out, but right now that's kind of the date we're all like looking at, like as soon as September, could be as late as November, somewhere around there.
I don't know, like, it's Metroid. It's kind of like that Zelda situation where like, well, Twilight Princess was released between the Wii and GameCube and all that, and I guess Breath of the Wild also with like the Wii U and Switch. I definitely want them to like as many consoles as possible between Switch 1 and Switch 2 to have as many people being able to play with the hype of like a new console. It'd be a wave of new people getting the new game that came out. So, but I just don't know too much about how development cycles would work and all that. Like, I don't know if they're too far into like the handling into the Switch to like then move some people into like developing on the Switch. I don't know if they have like the manpower or like the
That's a good
I don't know,
question.
to be able to like kind of like split their team to try to develop both copies of the game at the same time, because my knowledge on like the gaming, like the actual like development cycle and stuff like that isn't like too great. But my biggest fear would be like they stretch themselves too thin trying to push it on a new console that they don't really, that's not really like, I don't know, too much experience on, and then like kind of like lack a bit on the older console because they were just too focused on a newer one or something like that.
It's a complex scenario. I really don't get it either.
And I don't want them to like kind of like I don't want them to really like kind of like flounder on either end. So like preferably like if they can just like focus on the first Switch and then maybe like do like a remastered release like on the next Switch like later on. I would prefer something like that, just to like give them time and like not rush them on like another console or something like that.
Yeah, that's honestly my preferred scenario, to be honest. Like, it's not one I'll say out loud because people will tell me, you're crazy. Andy's thinking it right now.
It's not the most optimistic or the most like
I wasn't going to say it, but
idealistic.
But here's my thing. It's
Joseph.
like, if it comes out on Switch 2, like, regardless of if it's cross-gen or not, I'm going to want to play it on Switch 2. And now I have a whole level of anxiety because I'm like, how am I going to get a Switch 2 at launch?
Joseph, don't worry. You are crazy. Just confirming.
All right, but
If I
if
I may just give a quick point with all these, because all I was going to say is that I think it's going to be like a new 3DS scenario where they
Interesting.
develop the same game. Like, because Nintendo's always made their consoles backwards compatible in some fashion.
Yeah.
You know, Wii could play GameCube, DS could play Game Boy, 3DS could play DS, Wii U could play Wii. Obviously, you couldn't have done that for this from Wii U to Switch. But now that they're sticking with the same cartridge-based format, I think it'd be really silly that they wouldn't make their Switch 2 games, or at least the first couple of waves, backwards compatible with the Switch 1. I think that not making the Switch 2 Electric Boogaloo a backwards compatible console is kind of shooting themselves in the foot, because they can still make a lot of money from late adopters, or just simply have a new an alternative way to get to that system. And so if Metroid Prime 4 is indeed like a launch title for Switch 2 Electric Boogaloo, What they probably are going to do is optimize it for both systems, where you either have the one cartridge, because like at least back when Monster Hunter 4 came out for the 3DS, it played at a capped 30 frames per second on the vanilla 3DS, but then it was 60 on the new 3DS models because it's taking full advantage of its hardware, while not alienating either of the audience, because I don't think regardless of like Switch 2 Electric Boogaloo's backwards compatibility being themselves shooting themselves in the foot a little bit, it'd be doubly for Metroid if you make it a launch title and then only adopters who can afford, let alone find, a Switch 2 Electric Boogaloo on launch can only afford that game. And I don't really think that they'll be doing that same approach as, God of War Ragnarok, where it was released on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 for those people who are not able to find the console or whatever, because they've always been thinking about in a long-term plan, and I think that it would just benefit this new system to be backwards compatible in some fashion, and so make the game with the new console in mind, and then just simply optimize it and downscale it for the lesser hardware, similar to how you do it when you're porting a game to a PC, where you put the bare minimum specs, and then whoever has and can afford the higher specs can play the game in a nicer, prettier fashion, but that way you're not alienating either fan base, and thus you increase the chances of success for both your system and the game itself.
Very good point.
Speaking my language, brother.
That's right. But it's also like the game's not coming out until 2026 anyway. So
yeah,
like
so like and that's in a good way, because
Yeah.
it means they have even more time to optimize it for the Switch 1.
right.
So that way everybody can just be happy, and it's a win-win for everybody.
I need my Prime ray tracing. Not really. It doesn't need it. Ray tracing is too expensive, everybody. Let's just
Give me the
abolish-
God rays.
Yes.
God,
let's just
imagine the
abolish ray
beams with the
tracing.
ray tracing.
Give
though.
me 16 times the details.
Yes, but that was the discussion. You all did great. Give yourself a pat on the back. But yeah.
Good job,
I hurt
gang.
my back. Do you guys got health insurance? I broke my back by patting me.
Oh, you don't know your own strength, man.
No,
you,
I sometimes forget.
Did you try the Space Pirate Morph Ball experiment? Is that what's going on?
Oh shit.
No. I tried wearing a Metroid as a hat once.
Well,
I learned that from experience. That's a bad move.
train all those years of training Metroids. But thank you all so much for joining me on this Metroid Prime 4 discussion. Hopefully we don't have another one next year on this anniversary. Hopefully we'll be playing the game by then or something. I'm losing my mind. But I think
I believe.
I'm optimistic. Hopeful.
Patience is key. Let them cook.
Yes, primed for patience. But tell us where we can find you, Reese and Andy, that Omega Metroid podcast. Tell us where we can find you.
Well, you can check us out. We have a weekly Metroid podcast. Somehow we do it weekly, and that is wherever you get your podcasts. You can check us out on omegametroid.com as well. We have like maps and walkthroughs and all like a bunch of Metroid stuff on there as well that you can go and visit. We have full episodes over on our YouTube channel, also at Omega Metroid, and we are at Omega Metroid Pod on Twitter. I am at Spiteri316 on Twitter. So give us a follow. And hey, check out, we have a whole family of other podcasts too, like the Zelda Cast and Virtual Theater, whole lots of stuff. So we're all over the place. Doom, did I cover everything?
Yeah, that's pretty much all the Omega Metroid stuff. Just for my own personal stuff, I also do a lot of music projects and voice work as well. And my most recent remaster project was the Metroid Prime Remastered soundtrack. I got those files from the game and just did a whole EQ preset thing there. Did a lot of edits and fixed some notorious recording errors. And it's now the Prime Prestige version of the soundtrack. And so definitely check that out if you like Metroid Prime music. So I assume most of
Very
you do.
clean. Did a great job.
It's lit, fam. All right, Metroid Trainer, tell us where we can find you.
You can find me in my YouTube, the Metroid Trainer, and all that same name and everything. I just cover basically Metroid content from lore, opinion stuff like top 10s and reviews, and occasionally try to drop news if anything major comes out. But for the most part, it's just a lot of just waiting until Metroid Prime 4 announces something. So
That's the
yeah,
line.
but yeah, that's pretty much it. So.
All right, Orpheon, you're last. Tell us where we can find you.
You can find me orbiting around Talon 4.
Nice.
That was an Orpheon joke. No, I mean,
Yes.
I make Metroid videos. You can find me over on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, everywhere at the Orpheon. It's probably me. I like to do Metroid videos from the lore to gameplay analysis and mechanics to other non-related Metroid videos from other franchises that I like to hyperfixate and always talk about the intricate details that go into making some of these games magical for us. And I sometimes do some streams over on Twitch. I do have a Twitter, even though I'll be honest, I've kind of abandoned it for a little bit,
I feel
and
that.
soon we'll be making some original projects, so I hope that you guys are tuned in and looking forward to those coming soon. Yes, there's some Metroid things related into it, so I hope that our audience who are listening to this might be interested in it. And you can, and I'm also on Discord, so if you ever want to have a simple chat or whatever, feel free to just look for me and send me a message. I'm more than happy to talk about Metroid or whatever other thing that I might be into, the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV.
Oh my god, you're one of those people. All right.
Oh, I mean, you before this, I all had to say that was my 14 character, and that's why I swapped to this chibi instead.
Amazing, incredible. But thank you all so much for watching this incredible discussion here on GameXplain. Be sure to subscribe for more Metroid Prime 4 content and hopefully the near future. And until next time, bye bye.